Ok.
Ok, iniziata la diretta.
Ma io YouTube ancora non lo vedo, però. Voi lo vedete?
Però
Adesso
siamo in diretta, però.
sì,
Io c'ho il tablet acceso e non lo vedo nel tablet.
sì, è
No,
fatto.
non si vede.
Io adesso lo vedo.
Ma su tablet?
No, sul computer.
Ma YouTube, no? Intendo dire YouTube sempre.
YouTube. Vi vedete voi.
Okay, we can start, Patrizia.
Okay.
Grazie. Thank you.
Julia. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third and last session of the Smart Boards workshop. In this session, we have 4 presentations. Before starting, I propose a small change in the order of this session because we have 2 presentations that are very close to each other, so it can be useful to have them close even in the program. So I suggest this new order. The first presentation will be strategic planning for special economic zone to ports of the future. Then the second one will be special economic zone planning for sustainable ports, and then smart ports from theory to practice, and finally not only waterfront. I remember that we have 15 minutes for presentation plus a couple of minutes for questions and answers at the end of each presentation. I think we can start with the first presentation, which is by Russo, Chila, and Zito from the University of Reggio Calabria. And Francesco Russo will be presenting the study Strategic Planning for Special Economic Zone to Foster the Future, System of Models and Test Case. Professor Russo, the floor is yours.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm sorry it don't go good with the full screen.
It's fine.
Anyway, but I think that this way you can see in a quite good way. I hope.
Yes.
Okay. I hope in 15 minutes I will finish my presentation. My presentation is coordinated with the other presentation that this morning give Professor Musolino and Professor Panuccio and Dr. Pellegano this morning. And this afternoon there is my presentation, and after the presentation of Professor Rindone. My presentation regards the study of 2 specific models inside the model that we propose for the special economic zone, to study the special economic zone. We want to present just some elements, because around the world there is a very large number of sorry, I have a return. Okay.
Do you hear? Sorry?
Yes, I can hear.
Yes.
Okay. And then there is a large number of special economic zones around the world. But we want to consider the main element to increase the quality of special economic zone. This morning, Domenica Pellegano present one of the main motive to start with a special economic zone, that is the cost that have some part of the world where you introduce new economic zone. The problem is that in general, if you have 2 different ports, the competition between the 2 different ports is just on the cost for transportation. Then if a cost B has a cost less than a different port A, the freight go in port B. But if you obtain a very important result, that in the cost A we realize a special economic zone where you introduce a very important value added in the freight that use this port, this special economic zone, and then you have a benefit greater than the cost in the Porto A. In these cases, it's very difficult that the Porto A jointly with the special economic zone of the Porto A can be in the utility less than other port. Then, how do you say, is unfungible as a port. The idea is that you have a double level of interaction because the port supply the good to the special economic zone and the special economic zone produce value added to the port. Then you have a sort of binary, very inseparable. If you create this important binary inseparable, this bipole inseparable, you obtain very important result for the port, and following the approach of Mussolini of this morning, you move to a very third generation port. In this case, our interest is to verify if the way that we want to pursue it for the port to increase the special economic zone is in line with Agenda 2030 or cross the goal of Agenda 2030. We recall just one slide the goal of Agenda 2030, but we want to recall the figure. This is the general figure of goal. You remember that you have for each goal more than 10 target and about 20 indicator for each goal. Our idea, if you want to compact the 17 goals in a sort of short group, you have that our interest is mainly in the 8, 9, and 10 goals, because are the three goals where you represent the economic and social goals. If you consider the 7 and the 13 goals, you have the environmental goals. Then, substantially, you need to represent the target and the indicator relative to the goal 8, 9, and 10 to consider the social economic, the 7 and the 13 for the environment. In this way, we summarize in 3 macro groups the goals that we want to follow. And this is the group proposed, this is the segmentation proposed by the first report on sustainability, the Brundtland report. For the economic sustainability, we consider the export at the employment level, the growing foreign capital investment, the upgraded technology transfer, and in the social, we consider the rising working standard, the development of human resources, and environmental, we consider 2 different elements relative to the anthropized and non-anthropized areas. Some issues concerning the increase of energy efficiency, environmental friendly propulsion, and so on. Then now we want to see what is the results in terms of output and then outcome and then goals that follow this macro goal defined by Agenda 2030. The proposed system model for all the special economic zone is very large and complex, but we can resume in 6 different models, of which the first one is the aggregated impact model, that is the model proposed this morning by Professor Musolino, where we study the number of employees that we can have in a region where we start with a special economic zone. Then there are the two models that we present this afternoon, the land capacity constraint, the economic and functional link. Then three other models that we present in other presentation. In particular, from the first one, from the aggregated impact, it emerged, the model that was presented this morning, it emerged the result in terms of export of goods and services and employees in companies established in the special economic zone. If we have this number, we can finish, in general, we can presume that we can finish our work, but it's not the cases because we have that after the study of the direct employees in sales, you obtain this number, but this number is without any constraints. Why? Because you don't have that in your region. In our test case, for example, is Calabria, but the same is correct for Sardinia or for Sicilia or for the other region in Italian country where start the special economic zone. What happened? That you, to introduce the direct employees, for example, in our case, we obtain that we can have sales that produce more or less 20,000 of employees direct, but there is a problem where you can realize the factory for these people. Then you have a necessity to specify a land capacity. And the land capacity for the Italian law is a constraint for the special economic zone. Because, for example, to the special economic zone of Calabria, you need more or less to obtain 20,000 of employees. You need more or less 10,000 of hectare. But you don't have this area because the government, the Italian government, assigned just 2,500. Then the second model, that is the model that I present this afternoon, is the constraints that you have on your place that limits the growth of employees. After this, you have the third model, that is the gravitational model, where we introduce the link, the economic link. If you develop a special economic zone, not all concentrated in the same area, but with a sort of star area, where you have an hub, a central hub, and different spots. After these three
Professor
models,
Russo, 4 minutes.
yes.
Okay.
The other model is the scenario where you realize the factory inside your special economic zone, and then using the rule of the law, the cost for the special economic zone. Finally, you can calculate indirect and induced employed from this. But our presentation is not a noir romance in Italy and yellow romance. Then we present the general model with the different links that is KISS, the specification for the two model, and I go direct in the first conclusion that is this, and I can skip the remaining part of our presentation, where you obtain that the direct sorry. The direct employed that we obtain with with our model is more or less 7,000 of employees direct. The direct with the indirect is more or less 13,000, and finally the full number is more or less 16,000 of employees. This is the general result that we obtain applying our model. Who want can read our paper for the specification of the model. I go very quickly in the other slide, but just as a movie of Walt Disney. This is the formulation of the land capacity constraint model with the specification of the employees. This is the scenario hypothesis with different level of use. This is the specification of the model considering also the regeneration of our territory by means of the investment of a special economic zone. The second is the economic functional link. In the first case, we have the study of the demand that interrelate the different part of the ZES, of the start that we proposed before. This is the final model that we study to evidentiate the link, and this is the result. The case study of Giadauro is the specification of the hypothesis and arrive finally at the result in the conclusion of the 16,000 employees. We think that is a good result because this represents more or less about the 10% of the increasing of employees in Calabria region. We think that a good policy for special economic zone can be very important for the region, the Italian region, where this policy was implemented. Thanks. We'll stay in the 15 minutes.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have time for question. Anyone from the room or from online has a question to ask?
No?
No? Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Russo, again, very interesting, very rich your presentation. I think so we can move to the second presentation, which is by Rindone, Cirianni, Delfino and Croce from the University of Reggio Calabria. Corrado Rindone will be presenting special economic zone planning for sustainable ports, the role of research and training in the Calabria region. Corrado, the cloud is yours.
Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good evening. Perfect. Okay. Good evening. My name is Corrado Rindone from University of Reggio Calabria. This work is related, as previously introduced by Francesco Russo, with other presentations in ICCSA. In this work, we focus on the role of research and training in planning to develop a special economic zone. And we study the specific case of the SEDS in Calabria region. SEDS has a relevant role for sustainable development in depressed area. And we focus in particular with specific SEDS near to a container port. In this presentation, we have three main sections. The first section introduces the problem and the research question of this work. In the second section, we present the process for strategic planning with the focus on the methodology adopted for defining the immaterial interventions, and in particular for research and training. And in the third section, we present the application of this methodology to the specific case of the SEDS in Calabria in the Gioia Tauro port. Now it's possible to count by referring to the years 2019 about 5,000 SEDS in the world. A great part of these SEDS is related to underdeveloped economies. There are some factors that characterize a special economic zone, and the best known factors is related to special conditions and favorable tax regimes. But our research questions is related to the role of innovation, and in particular to of the research and development and training to produce the added value for a port that is the focus of our work. Then it's necessary to introduce the concept of the port generation by UNCTAD, because from the first generation of ports that are related to industrial area to the third generation that is related to container revolution, in this third generation the manipulation of goods increase the added value. But manipulation of goods is strictly connected to also in the material activities, also to the immaterial activities, by referring to in general innovation processes and research and training. Then we focus on the role of research and training activities for increase the performance of efficiency in terms of efficiency and productivity of a container port. And with the specific case of Gioia Tauro port, that is at Anticor node in the south of Italy, that represent the main case study of this work. In particular, it's possible to individuate a framework for the strategy for the process of the strategic planning of a special economic zone in general. And with specific reference with a specific SEDS near to the port. The main objective of this planning is to produce the added value, that is a measure to increase value in production and distribution process. To produce and to reach these objectives, different activities, planning activities can be designed and implemented. For instance, working to structural factor for production process, by considering the role of maritime transport in the supply chain, and the specific role of knowledge about production process and combination with the supply chain at global level. As introduced before by Professor Russo, it's possible to see that in the competition among port at global level is very important the role of added value, because the benefit produced in terms of added value can overcome the cost. Then without considering added value, the competition is related to only to the cost of transport. But with the consideration of AV, the competition is more is influenced by the added value produced in the ports. And then analyzing this concept and why it is important to work about in material structural factors, is possible to underline that in a SEDS area there are a combination among traditional factor of production, the role and special condition deriving from the SEDS area, and in particular for the factor studied in this presentation. The knowledge in this work are related to three main, can be produced by three main classes: by internal to the company, knowledge, research and knowledge produced inside the companies; by business network inside the economic district; and the research centers that operate in territory near to the SEDS area. This is the main framework that represent from one side the structural factors, and from our side the expected impact in terms of sustainability and their component. In particular, by considering the factors of research and training, we propose a procedure that is aimed to individuate intervention on research and training. In particular, there are three main steps. In the first step, the set of economic sector is selected that operate near to in the SEDS areas. In the second step, we analyze all research center that operate in the area, and in the third step, there is a matching, an intersection between the two sets, in order to individuate the set of research center that can contribute to add the value in general, or in the specific, and in general to sustainability. Then the last part of my presentation regard the SEDS in the Calabria region. According to the national law, the Calabria region has developed a strategic development plan and configure a SEDS distributed in all territory of Calabria. The core and the fulcrum of this SEDS is the Gioia Tauro port, that have very large potentiality because plays different function. Now the traditional function is related to transshipment, but now is a gateway port that play a relevant role in the competition between northern and southern range in Europe. Then it's possible, and I go fast in this slide presented in other presentation, that represent the structural material factor of SEDS in Gioia Tauro. And we try to explain how our methodology is applied for the SEDS Gioia Tauro. We consider the main economic sector, mechanic, agriculture, and transport and logistics. And we try to analyze the role of research and training in this territory. Is possible?
4 minutes.
Okay. Arrive to the conclusion. In this region, in the Calabria region, the investment are very low. And in this near to the port of Gioia Tauro operate the University of Reggio Calabria and the specific laboratories that are presented in this slide that can contribute to all economic sector of the SEDS. In conclusion, we present we can recall some final remarks in terms of the role of material intervention related to the research and trainings. We propose a procedure that we applied to individuate research and development intervention in the economic in the development of the plan for develop the SEDS in Calabria region. This plan is working about different structural factors, and we work with research and development factors. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Anyone would like to ask a question to Corrado? Anyone from the room? No one? Corrado, just out of curiosity about when you present the 3 steps, one of the steps was innovation. I'd like to ask you how it can be performed innovation matching. I mean, you have an idea about how to perform this innovation matching between enterprises and research centers? I don't know.
Sorry, but I understand the last part of the question. I don't have the last part of the question. Okay. The question is about the matching. Yes.
Yes.
Matching between research center.
No, I don't know how you think it can be performed, this innovation matching between, I think, between enterprises, I think, between port enterprises, I don't know, research centers, training centers, I think.
Yes, okay. This matching is possible to perform in 2 main sides. From the side related to enterprise and firms, there are some needs. It's possible to think, for instance, to the digitalization process that characterize the activities for all economic activities, and in the specific for supply chain. From one other side, I think that there are different opportunities for the research. For instance, in my research topic that consists in transport planning, and because with the use, for instance, of big data, now we can apply some transport system models that can simulate the performance of supply chain and the role of port in this supply chain. And I think that this match with the needs of firms that can compete, that operate in the global competition in order to increase efficiency of our operation and operation in the port.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let's move on to the third presentation, which is by Battino and Elmar Munoz Leonisio from the University of Sassari and Cadiz. This presentation is in presence. Okay, is Smart Port from Theory to Practice, a review of sustainability indicators. Now, it's another presentation.
Ok. No, non è questa. Non è questa? No. Questa?
Ok.
Okay.
Silvia Battino will be...
Sì,
Okay.
sì. Thank you, Patrizia. Yes, I'm Silvia Battino from the University of Sassari, and also there is my colleague Mariama Del Mar Munoz Leoniso from the University of Cadiz. And together we present the work named Smart Port from Theory to Practice, a review of sustainability indicators. So, we have divided the presentation to 4 sections. That is a quick introduction on the smart approach in different territorial contexts, and then we highlight the role and the evolution of this concept for the seaport. In this context, the purpose of the paper was to analyze some tools, methodologies, and strategies adopted in recent decades by different port authorities to improve the operation and use of port spaces. In particular, the aim was to focus on port sustainability indicators, which are an interesting tool to verify smartness and sustainability of the port area. So finally, the last part is dedicated to some conclusions. Concerning the smartness approach, we can create, cohesive spaces when the smart concept is applied to different spaces to make them more accessible and integrated, and where the role of information communication technologies is essential to activate different sustainable development growth projects. And today we apply the smart concept, to cities, rural territories, islands, and tourist destinations, of course, in the context of the port. Before talking about the smart port concept, we would like to say a few words about the port system in Europe. According to data, according to statistics, the port sector employ 1.5 million workers, moves 420 million passengers, and allow also 74% of goods to be exported and imported. So these data appear to be a positive element of economic development and job creation, of course, but it's natural that the many and different port activities also create negative effects. So to minimize these effects, in recent years, the ports have undergone transformation to balance the different technical, commercial, and also legal aspects. So in particular, the evolution of a port can be explained from the proposal of a theoretical model realized in 1990, and during the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. And the model considered strategies adopted at the local level, services provided, and information technology to differentiate first, second, third, fourth, and fifth generation port. And so we reference to the case study. When we talk about smart port, it's not only the more or less diffuse presence of technology in the environment that make it smart. We have other conditions, for example, the provision of high quality infrastructure, and the operational integration with the other port operators, and the territories that gravitate towards it. And we have also the ability to process significant amount of data, or the achievement of a competitive advantage, and at the same time, and having the ability to implement practices that are respectful of the environment and also of the citizenship. So therefore, it's important, it's necessary to combine digitization with careful planning and management of port operation. So this makes it possible to find sustainable and intelligent solutions to, for example, optimize logistics and environmental impact, to promote efficiency and improve the safety of both seaports and coastal region involved. So I leave you the floor to Maria to continue the presentation, to introduce the second part related to the indicator smart port.
Grazie, Silvia. Well, it's obviously nowadays the increase in social and economic demands is causing that ports to incorporate initiatives to reduce environmental impact and improve port operations. Landlord Port is the most common organization of the main ports of North America, Europe, and Asia. The terminal operator can build and maintain its own equipment on port land and hire workers, while public agencies maintain the property and strategic control over the ports. It's obviously that a private operator adapts more quickly to changes in markets than public agencies. It must be taken into account that the survival of terminals depends on the existence of profits. PAs are responsible to respond of social demands, while private operators must offer the best services to port users. Based on related works and standard management systems, we have established a set of actions classified into 4 main activities. Into port operations, environment, energy, safety and security, or cybersecurity. These measures are not the only possible, and not do they exclude the possibility of adding others. The transition to a smart port is an ever-evolving process. In any case, this analysis will permit us to investigate which are the most accepted and applied smart port indicators. Our first objective is to monitor the common key performance indicators and detect which smart port objectives are not met. Obviously, these are not the only behaviors. it's important to mention that this behavior is voluntary on the parts of private agencies. And in further research, we will apply these indicators to Spanish ports and to establish a ranking of smart ports. And it should be interesting to contrast the use of key performance indicators and financial or operational efficiency. And we have finished. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you very much to both of you. Any question? Anyone who would like to ask a question? No? No? So thank you again.
Thank you.
So we can go to the last presentation of this session, which is by Balletto, Borruso, Campisi from the Universities of Cagliari, Trieste and Enna. I think Giuseppe Borruso will be presenting.
Yes.
Okay. So Giuseppe will be presenting the study not only waterfront, the port-city relations between peripheries and inner harbors.
Okay, good afternoon again, everybody. Thank you for being here. Can you ask people at home if they can see the slides moving on the yes. Screen? Okay, great. Okay, so this is, I think, it is the last presentation that we are having this Smart Ports workshop. We're going to close it today, so I'll try to be quite brief. The research that we are presenting so far, it is a reflection that we have been doing together with Ginevra Balletto and Tiziana Campisi, respectively from the University of Cagliari and Catania in Italy, about an issue that, in our opinion, hasn't been tackled very much during the more recent years, in particular, that is the port-city relations that we can find between what are the challenging areas concerning ports and cities as let's say the inner harbors area and the urban peripheries, because generally, as we know from literature, the city-port relationship have been generally focused very much on the waterfront, particularly with reference to the reuse of the former port-related activities and areas to more urban uses, and the conflicts between the urban and port activities, but particularly related to the waterfront and therefore to the more central areas of the cities, when those central areas are considered as facing the sea. So what we are presenting here so far, it is this kind of overview on the 3 case studies that are the Port of Cagliari, Catania, and Trieste. But as a general element, we hereby want to present actually what it is expected to do in the near future as a research that we are going to carry on, particularly in developing a method of studying those areas that in our opinion are these areas not strictly related to centers. The starting point of this idea of this research, it is the well, I think the quite known any-port model as developed by Birds in 1963, and as represented here in this recent representation by Notboom, Rodriguez and Tal, in which Birds actually represented the major stages of any port in particular. He actually focused on British ports in the 60s, but as a general model, and as the general as the general rule taken from the observation of different port realities, in which a port generally has a setting stage in which there is the terminal facilities are located in a certain point, and the downtown area of the city is actually surrounding the port. In the expansion period, the terminal facilities and port-related activities start to move out from the original city center, together with the expansion of the city, and the final stage is that of the specialization, in which actually we have a further development of different terminals dedicated to different purposes and different kind of goods, characterized by different kind of facilities and infrastructure, and particularly by water depth that depend also on the different ranges that the port is actually serving. The city itself is also extending, and a set of transport infrastructure are going to be developed in order to serve both the port and the urban needs. What we are in the same years also proposed what was known as the port triptych model, but is actually the three elements as the port space, as an interface between the foreland as the maritime space, with all the set of regular lines that connect the port with other areas within a range or towards other ranges, and the continental space as the hinterland that is connected, where the inland destinations are connected by railroads and river, and all the set of land communication things. But the port space remain actually the area to be actually studied and observed, and in particular, the focus here it is actually to propose a further stage of the BERD model, which is that of the kind of a hybridization stage, in which actually, as we are observing, particularly in gateway ports, in many cases the brand new terminals are also are generally realized in order to be realized as multi-purpose terminals, in order to be flexible enough to host the most recent ways of moving different kinds of unitized transport. It is at the time, as a matter of example, in which multi-purpose terminals are realized in order to host both RoRo and low-low ferries, with consequences also on the space and also on the handling of these particular kinds of goods. So the idea it is actually to start from a survey of the original of a set of ports that is, as said, those of Cagliari, Catania, and Trieste. Starting from this first observation, to propose a kind of matrix of observation of different steps of analysis to be carried on, in order to highlight in the port areas those areas that are not just the place of possible conflict or let's say hard interaction between ports and the city, but also of those areas that are not so easily detectable and definable. Peri-urban areas, peripheral areas in urban areas are the areas of a city that today are quite critical in hosting some of the major issues, particularly from the social point of view. On the other side, the port activities are in many cases moving out from the waterfront and moving towards more internal allocations. In many cases, in a way that they are not so strictly related to the official presence of port-related activities. Dry ports, of course, but as we can think about that, also other logistic activities, private logistic activities can be thought of as port-related activities that occupy space and may interfere with other urban uses. So the first idea is to have an overview of the different ports. Here we have got a representation of the port of Cagliari, where we have the representation of the channel port and the old port, in which different functions are actually present in terms of the Ro-Ro movements and the passenger traffic, and the changing role of the channel port after the period of working as a transshipment node, now to be modified in order to host here again, in light of a hybridization of transport in a Ro-Ro terminal. Again, here it is the Port of Cagliari. It is actually to be involved as well as in the previous presentation we have seen in the special economic zones, and therefore hopefully in the opportunities that could be taken from the development of such a tool and instrument. Similar consideration can be done with reference to the port of Catania, where, as we can notice, there is a coexistence in a quite limited amount of space, particularly on the coastline, of a wide urban area and functions that are related to port activities, from freight port activities and passengers port activities, as well as leisure ones, with the presence of the beach. And again, here, as the city is actually expanding out from the proper waterfront, pressures can be also observed and expressed. In the case of Trieste, we can observe similarly the evolution of the city port relation, with the yellow part actually being the original part of the port and the original part of the city around that, with some external movement of the port towards the other more external parts of the city, together with an expansion of the city itself out of that. Similarly, with the development of the inland terminal, with the dry ports, that are the white areas represented in the map on the left, that are located in strategic position, particularly related to the presence of major transport infrastructure, that are now hosting activities that once were just carried on in the port area and the waterfront. Of course, the presence of and the development of these areas are also important in terms of the potential pressure that we are going to play also on the communities that are hosting them, particularly with the increase in the traffic that is actually affecting these ports. This is a very bad, sorry. Okay, the basic idea is that I skipped those slides because they're quite difficult to read, actually. Our proposal, our methodological proposal, it is actually to carry on several step research dedicated to the set of ports that we are analyzing, in order to observe, on one side, what are the different instruments and what they do imply in terms of their on the actions and the policies that are going to take place in the different parts of the territory: urban planning, port planning, transport, industrial planning, and what is called de facto planning. That is what the last mile logistics of the last few years it is actually causing in the cities. That is the private operators, and the fact that there is a need to cover the last mile for frequent and small size parcels. And on the other side, the areas, the major areas where these policies have effect: central area, semi-periphery, periphery, and the port area itself. On the other side, we launch also the other approach, that is that of using a kind of standard kind of representation and categorization of the urban areas in Europe, that is the FUA, that is the functional urban areas, obtained actually using a same framework, that is the Copernicus data reaggregated in order to present common features functional urban areas are done in order to highlight urban areas that are the offspring of a combination of commuting and population density factors. In doing that, the classification of the land use and the transformation of the land use actually can be used to observe also what have been the transformation of the different parts of the city in terms of residential activities, or as a matter of example, of port-related activities. This is more or less what we have done so far. Of course, we are at the beginning of a process of building a new model, actually, of modifying a certain model, and in order to try to highlight new areas of potential development and also of threats for the port-city relationship. Thank you very much for your attention, and of course I'm available if there is good.
Thank you very much. I see that Giuseppe Musolino would like to ask a question. Giuseppe?
Yes, Patrizia. Thank you for your presentation. Perhaps I lose in the first part of your presentation something, but I missed the objective of the research. So, I mean, did you plan to identify and quantify some indicators that could allow you to quantify the relation, the port-city interactions, in order to sketch some lines of development of the analyzed ports? This is this is perhaps I don't know if I lose something. Thank you.
Well, the basic object of the research, as I tried to highlight, is that there are two, if you consider ports and cities.
Giuseppe, sorry.
Yes.
Could you speak close to the microphone?
Sorry, okay. You can see me, but you can hear me. Okay. So the basic idea behind the research is the fact that we started from the consideration that both ports and cities are actually facing some kind of issues that are related to their expansion, and generally because of the changes that are occurring in ports and cities, and particularly in port cities. In particular, if we think from the urban point of view, we know that the most challenging areas of cities so far around the world are peripheries and semi-peripheral areas, that are those parts of the city that are actually facing social problems of deployment of services, problems of connectivity, different kinds of issues that are hopefully in the agenda to be tackled in the years to come. On the other side, ports are also moving, as we do know, many port-related activities, or not strictly port-related activities, out from the waterfront, from the quays, because they are best realized, or they can be done more efficiently out from the port areas, dry ports, inland terminals, etc., etc. And also, apart from the official facilities, also non-listed facilities can be considered as port-related activities and can play a role in the expansion of the port-related areas. So the idea is we have spent years in thinking about how we can refurbish waterfront, and give them to city users, having in Italian cities in particular a huge heritage of cubic meters of buildings that we will never refurbish because we are shrinking as a country. So, but what are the pressure of that are in terms of industrial and port expansion and social issues? Can we also focus on some other areas that are not just the city center? This is actually the question that we are kind of asking, trying to put together the two different orientation, the purely urban one and the purely port ones. I don't know if I did answer, if I did reply to your question.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
So I think the session is over. I don't know if Giuseppe, we wanted to add some words to close the session, to the workshop.
No, it's
No,
okay.
Giuseppe Borruso.
Sorry.
Oh, otherwise, we have finished. So thank you all the presenters for the interesting presentation. Thank you everyone for joining us. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day. See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye, grazie Patrizia.
Bye-bye.
Aspetta, adesso ti tolgo tutto. Tolgo tutto. No. Aspettate un attimo che c'è Damiano che mi sta impazzendo, lo stanno facendo impazzire. Questa cosa di scrivere break time vedeva dura mezz'ora. Questa cosa di scrivere break time, scrivere l'orario è nuovo, vero? Ieri non c'era. Sì, c'era, e questo lo sono dimenticati forse nelle sessioni che hai visto. No, io ho preso. Ciao Ginevra. Okay. Oh yeah. Maybe it's better between 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, okay. Quando usano i minuti. Angela! Ciao Angela!
Ehi!
Angela! Comunque siamo su YouTube.
Siamo su YouTube.
Siamo su YouTube, però ti vogliamo bene. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, chiudiamo il microfono che la cerco. Ciao. E attenta.
Ciao. Ma io non vi vedo.
E qua la web. No, vedono questo. Ma questo pure. Ah, vedono quello. Lo metti nella telecamera con... Ma se ti metti qua. Così. Così. Aspetta. Sì, vi vedo. Cioè, vabbè. Vabbè, siamo su YouTube. Ok. Ma cosa vuol dire?
So, good afternoon and welcome to the session Move to Zero 2015. This session is the models and indicators for assessing and measuring the urban settlement development in the view of zero net intake by 2015. This workshop was organized by myself and by Lorena Fiorini, Alessandro Marucci, and Francesco Zullo from University of L'Aquila, and Angela Pilogallo, that is now online on Jitsi, from University of Basilicata. There are in this session 4 presentations. Very different presentation is one for urban settlement dispersion, lane take, policies related to zero net lane take, and the application of cellular automata models to study and analyze the drivers of settlement evolution. I will take a same charge for the program because I have 3 presentations and I was me for first, and after the presenter was Anna Schwab. So we start with but the first presentation, that is ecosystem services for planning impact assessment on urban settlement development, and I will present. Online, you can see my screen.
Yes, of course.
Okay, this work was developed with Angela Pilogallo, the first author, from University of Basilicata, myself, Lorena Fiorini, and Alessandro Marucci. Urbanization process represents all over the world one of the greatest threats to ecosystem services and biodiversity conservation. The different dynamics of development, the speed of settlement growth, and the specificities of different contexts lead to increased threats and pressure that have a negative impact in terms of reducing and fragmenting natural habitats, depleting their capacity to provide ecosystem services and to constitute suitable sites for resource provisions and reproduction of wild animal and plant species. In this perspective, it is extremely important for planners to have methodologies and tools to understand and quantify the consequential effects of the implementation of urban and spatial plans on natural systems and their capacity to provide ecosystem services. This paper proposes an innovative approach for assessing planning choice related to urban expansion processes on the basis of their influence on the capacity of ecosystems to provide services for human well-being and biodiversity conservation. The question we are trying to answer with this research is how can the ecosystem service approach help renew the planning system by placing environmental components as a service providers whose availability is a prerequisite for any sustainable development strategy. For answer this question is possible to resolve certainly by doing through a performative approach, by limiting the fragmentation of sectoral policies and evaluating and assessment of special transformation. These works take place within the framework of the project Life Imagine in Umbria region and focuses on the territory of the Perugia city in central Italy, which cover approximately 450 square kilometers. The aim of this research is to assess the effects of urban growth in the city of Perugia in terms of ecosystem services, in particular with habitat quality and habitat degradation, with the dataset regarding urban atlas at 3 temporal datasets and the last urban plan mosaic of Perugia city. Just for an overall description of the area, the overall settlement system of Perugia city is characterized by 4 main macro components. The first is represented by the historic nucleus, which has preserved the characteristics of the compact settlement. Second macro component is made up of the system of secondary centers located beyond the Genna Valley, which are characterized by considerable complexity due to the overlapping and mixing of urban and rural structures and functions. The urban centers along the Tiber Valley, which constitute the third macro component, have different specificities. They are in fact urban aggregates that have developed quite compactly around the pre-existing historical settlements. Finally, the last component is diffuse urbanization, consisting of small residential and productive area set in a disorderly and fragmented way in the rural and natural landscape. The negative impacts on habitats and ecosystems of high fragmented aggregates and the poor socioeconomic efficiency of low-density settlements have led to the Umbria region to search for settlement planning and design models oriented to favor settlement aggregation and preserve the significant landscape heritage. In order to obtain an overall picture in terms of the effects of urbanization on natural system and to avoid the highland effects linked to the assessment of the model of habitat quality and degradation, the elaboration were carried out at a supramunicipal scale, including some municipality around Perugia city. And for all of these municipalities, the informative layer of the urban atlas were available. So this is the data set regarding the urban atlas, and was used as the starting data on which, after the plan forecasts were then added. And the other data concern, in fact, the urban plan. The mosaic of urban plan has been developed to have a strategic vision on spatial transformation forecast, and it was developed in a previous project, in previous Sunlight project, according to the principles of the planning to mosaic, and contains the synthesis of the contents of the individual municipal planning tools, and using a unified legend obtained from the interpretation of the zoning allocation given in the source documents of the plan. In this way, the zoning of, for example, land plans flowing into the planning tool mosaics is welded into a single layer accompanied by a single database. The methodology is essentially structured in two different steps. The principal two steps: the construction of a synthesis vector layer showing the zoning of the municipal territory of Perugia according to what foreseen in the urban plan. The execution after of the habitat quality model with reference to the two phases before and after the implementation of the expansion zone, and therefore the increase in building and housing density. So in particular, the first phase concerned the land use, the classification of the land use and the building of habitat suitability. And this was done with the urban atlas that consists of 26 classes, many of which are allocated to the urbanization system, divided by degree of density. The value assigned to habitat suitability increases as the degree of naturalness of the soils increases. Maximum value in this case are for forests and wetlands. In general, in work and case studies strictly related to urban and spatial planning, it is common to attribute threats only to anthropic territorial components such as infrastructures, urban aggregates, production area, extraction sites, and landfills. The ugly detailed format of the urban atlas also allowed for the differentiation of the threats posed by urban areas on the basis of the building densities. In particular, in this case, 3 types of urban areas were considered, characterized by increasing value of both weight and the distance of impact of streets. The first type, Urba 1, includes isolated structures, construction sites, and discontinuous, very low density urban fabric. The second one, Urban Areas 2, comprises low and medium density urban areas, and the third consists of dense and continuous urban aggregates. Other streets in this case are the dump, the industrial area, and the viability system. The greatest weight for the streets was assigned to industrial areas. For the sensitivity matrix, we are building this matrix. The sensitivity matrix in particular is a representation of the expected impacts by each street on each land use class. The logic is to give higher value to higher impact. For example, the impact of, in this case, the impact of industrial areas on forest was given a value of about 1, the maximum value. For urbanization, the suitability value increases with increasing urbanization density. This table shows the results broken down by land use classes to understand how the processes had the greatest impact on the various classes. From 2012 to 2018, degradation decreases for some land use classes. In the forecast scenario, with the scenario with all the provision of urban plan, the degradation takes on positive values. That is, the degradation for this particular land use classes increase for all the land use classes. And in particular, the degradation increase a lot for the agricultural matrix. For the quality of the habitats, the results is to be read in reverse from the degradation. Negative values correspond to a decrease in quality, and on the contrary, the trend remains more or less the same in forecast scenario. For this model, the best results is regarding the habitat quality, the habitat degradation. This map shows the results of the two model, habitat quality and habitat degradation, the quality in green and the degradation in purple, and represents the state of the art and the the urban plan full implementation. And it's possible to see near the principal urban area an increase in the area with the maximum degradation values, especially as near the built-up area of Perugia. To facilitate the interpretation of the results and the comparison between the two scenarios, the habitat quality maps were reclassified into 5 classes from very low to very high. And this graph shows that in forecast scenario, area characterized by lower quality level increase at the expense of all other classes. So, in conclusion, the results show that the proposed approach provides useful insights to govern urban growth phenomenon by limiting random urban sprawl, disorderly urban sprawl, and to explain the trade-offs between natural habitat and urbanization need by orienting planning choice toward areas where the expected impacts are lower. And this constitutes an innovative aspect of this research. which operationally integrates the methodological framework of ecosystem services with the urban planning, supporting an ex-ante evaluation of processes and thus fostering more balanced combination between urban growth needs and ecosystem functionality. So thanks for your attention. If you have questions, please. Yes, in future is the future step of this work, because this is a preliminary work. Yes, and in the next step we want to apply the other ecosystem services such as carbon stock or the food provision and other ecosystem services. Pollination, yes. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
The table of the quality chains.
The value of habitat quality.
Yeah, the chains, the percentages.
Yes, because
I noticed there was really small numbers in the chains.
really
small.
Yes.
0. So how can you interpret these values? Maybe these cities in certain areas in the state need small, slow growth based on the data analyzed since 2006, for example, up to 2005. Rapid urbanization process sort of slow on. How do you interpret this change so slow?
Yes, in this year, in this period, the urbanization process was slowly. Yes, I know. But in the scenarios of prevision, the full implementation of urban plan was totally applied, and we consider the high level of density for this work. But in general, for the invest model applied in this work, the results regarding habitat quality and degradation are better to look at degradation results, because the quality not have a big increase, because the quality of a little piece of land is the variation is very, very little, and on the contrary, the degradation have effects. The degradation have effects on the other land use classes, and the quality regards only the land use classes of the expansion, and on the contrary, the degradation have effects on. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, now the other presenter is Anashua Charkboard, yes, with Hakem Omrani and Jacques Steller. The presentation is modeling the drivers of urban densification to evaluate built-up area extension, a data modeling solution to our zero net intake. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's a bit tough to attend the session after like lunch, but I will try to make it interesting and simple as much as possible. So as my title states, the modeling the drivers of urban densification to evaluate built-up area extension, and it's a modeling solution towards zero land take. It is presented by me, Anashua Chakravarti, a doctoral student at University of Liège, along with Hisham Omrani and Jack Taylor. Just to give a brief introduction of what are the contents of the work. It consists of the research background and how to monitor the land take, what is exactly densification or expansion, and what is our study area and the methods we are obtaining for that, and the different drivers which are controlling the factors, and ultimately the result, conclusion, and future works planned for the same. So to start, I want to give a small introduction about what is land take for normal people who might not have the idea. So despite a reduction in the last decade, from 2000 to 2006 in Europe, the land take in EU28 is still amounted to almost 539 kilometers square in 2012 to 18. The net land take is a concept where we combine the land take with land return to non-artificial land or the previous structure, that is through recultivation. While some land is recultivated in the EU28 in the period 2000 to 2018, there is still 11 times more land was taken, which is actually a matter of concern. So the concept behind the EU non-net land take 2050 is actually how to relate land take, or how to make a gap or bridge between the gap to relate land take as the balance between the already taken land and land that are yet to be recultivated or could be recultivated. And according to European Environment Agency, there is almost 78% of the land take which is affected or which is affecting the agricultural area, that is the arable land, pastures, and the mosaic farmland, which is again a matter of concern because 39.5% of arable land are still yet to uptake by the urban or artificial sealed material, while 37.1% is for pastures and mixed agricultural area. So how can we conclude that urban densification is a driver or as a driver for no net land take? Land take is the increment in artificial area over time and represent the increase in settlement areas, usually at the expense of rural, peri-urban, and urban area. While land consumption is a very common terminology, it is the umbrella term which is also used for land where healthy soil and intact habitats are converted for human use. So this is also leading to fragmentation, scattering, and also dispersion. While densification is a workaround or counterintuitive to these phenomena, so that is why densification could be a driver for no net land take, helping in long-term sustainability, improve city health and landscape which is getting hampered by the fragmentation. As a result of which, the target 15.3 of UN Sustainable Development Goal, commonly known as SDG, states that by 2030 it strives to combat desertification and to restore the degraded land, if not at all being stopped. And then there could be a question that what is exactly expansion, which is a very common terminology in urban development or urban studies, and what is exactly densification. So as shown in the study or in the picture, you can see that densification is exactly what is happening, that we are allocating the growing population or the growth which is very common in one single area or in the area which is already under built up consideration. So basically, densification is construction of new housing unit within existential residential area, whereas expansion refers to increase in the built up area, even uptaking the land which are present in rural or peri-urban area. As a result of which, when a new construction happens, there should be many other resources taken into account, like accessibility, infrastructure, which is impacting indirectly the economy of a country and also the nation. As a result of which, densification, on the other hand, could be formulated in an already existing area where all the accessibility to resources are easily available, thus increasing the healthier, walkable community and also a much efficient economical nation. Our study area includes Belgium, and it is particularly selected because according to EEA report, in urban sprawl, Belgium is one of the two greatest hubs with a weighted urban proliferation index of greater than 6 UPU. Since urban sprawl limits the scope for more sustainable land use, and especially in area of Brussels, which is also especially in area of Brussels, which is a very common urban area or urban core, and also province of Flanders, where main cities like Leuven and Ghent are present. And whereas our study area is very tricky because on the other hand, Wallonia is a much peri-urban area with a very low urban settlement. So urban sprawl limits the scope for more sustainable land use as it follows a ribbon or scattered pattern, which is very common in both Wallon, which is a urban area, and Flanders. Our methodology includes data acquisition, which we gathered from all the past literature reviews and already studies which has been conducted in the similar field, followed by preparation where we have considered cadastral data, that is a Belgian fiscal data supported by the land registry, from where we created built up maps for area 2000, 2010 and 20. And then from there we converted that cadastral data is a vector based data, so we converted the data into raster of 100 by 100 meters square, which is average building size in Belgium. And we created the dependent variable for the model, which is the density map, but we have to also understand that that map is mostly taking the footprint density and not the vertical density, which we think when we hear the term densification. And then we integrated all other independent actors of accessibility, geophysical and environmental, and prepared the data for VIF or collinearity test and classified the data using geometric classification, followed by the statistical analysis, which is the important part, like the multinomial logistic regression model, where we have fetched the odds ratio and p values or significant values, and finally validated it using a ROC curve. It is important to know that maybe there are already several models which are available, but why did we take MLR? Because it is easier to understand and it does not create any assumption without taking into consideration dependency of the variable. It requires less computational resources or computational time, and it does not rely on the distributional assumption in the same sense which other analysis might do. So this is the list of the different factors which are independent or basically which are driving the entire process of densification, including DEM, slope, distance to highways, primary roads, secondary roads, residential and local roads, distance to cities, parks, reserves, and railway station, household income, and number of household jobs, mean housing, population density, zoning, and total number of population. The values which could be seen over here are after conducting a VIF test. VIF test is basically the variance inflation factor test in order to see that whether all the dependent variables or variables which are being considered does not have any multicollinearity. This is because multicollinearity might result into a biasness because we are taking a statistical methods for our analysis. To summarize the result, because it's a model, so there will be only numbers and odds ratios which we fetched, so from which we can conclude the result that land development is more difficult due to elevation and slope, especially in terms of new development of expansion. So there is a negative relationship between slope and elevation for low and medium density. While natural amenities, park and reserves act as a very significant factors or actors, thus affecting the net land take through spatial segregation. And roads or any kind of Euclidean distance from roads class as a or less than 1, which is suggests that the probability of urban development or expansion is higher for location at a proximity of already developed highways, road stations. And zoning plays a very important factors in expansion, which is also in line with other studies that has already been conducted. For an example, a poor zonation policies can result into fragmentation or dispersion and also sprinkling of urban settlements. While as urban densification shows that household income factors has a very positive impact in terms of high density buildup, that could be for two reasons: that people with high earning and affordability prefer to stay at a place where there is already resource availability or access to resources are easily available. or else the people who are already staying in the urban core can be considered as rich or affluent to maintain such lifestyle or social life. The slope over value, on the other hand, is less than 1 in case of significant densification process, signifying that since we already say that existing built-up area, so that means that the built-up area is already there, and that tends to be in the flat terrain rather than a rugged topography. And in case of urban densification, the number of job is has a very positive impact, especially between medium and high density classes, which contribute to low work from home distance and encouraging the process of densification. So to conclude, there could be an observed pattern which we have concluded from our study that says that drivers like transport and communication, distance to natural amenities, and zonation has important factors to play in terms of densification, and which will by then relate to combating the expansion process. And also our study includes Brussels capital region, cities of Flemish and Walloon-Brabant, which is very interesting because both these three regions are governed by three different governments. So it is very important that if we are actually aiming towards one single goal, so in order to see that how we achieve, it is important to see how they work together or even in their spatio like segregation planning. Dense urban core like Brussels and Leuven show significant infill development over the years, while Wallonia is still on the paradigm shift between urban sprawl and densification. So in order to manage land take, as Jagger and Squeak also said, that it is important to see, as we know that like water or coal, these are non-renewable energy. So we keep an eye on how to use that efficiently. Similarly, if we treat land as one of our common property and something which might which might not replenish or recultivate or rejuvenated later, then we might limit the urban sprawl through our social action. Urban densification can also be seen as a workaround, which is probably a much more work to do, but it is also a much efficient way to manage the ongoing problem. And a robust regional policy and effective planning will help a nation to combat such problem and will help us to achieve the 2050 no net land take strategy. As a small future work to end with, we are currently planning to ingest a 3-dimensional aspect, because currently we are working on 2D footprint density. So we will be trying to ingest a 3D aspect for more realistic study. And now we are working on the map depending on the year of construction, which could be changed into different building uses and how they are interacting, for an example, between residential, commercial, and mixed use. And to further extend the study on footprint density, there could be many other advanced models which could be clubbed with the existing MLR model like cellular automata, and can be used for both raster value and also a vector database, and to test the model for separate different region of Belgium, and conducting a study that how the difference between their policy is actually affecting this particular phenomenon. So to end with, I believe this quote and I live by this quote, that sustainability is no longer doing less harm, but it is more about being a community together and try to do our best as much as possible and bring the best of us for a better society and a place to live in. Thank you, and any questions or feedback are highly welcome.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for the presentation. And there are questions?
Oops.
Yes. From me, just curiosity.
Yes.
In the model, use the social data. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. These social data are available for different periods, or you have to adapt to all the period considered, because your 3 temporal steps are more little.
Yes.
And
Yes, it's a very good question, but mainly the social data we have got it from the statistical sector of Belgium, and they are mostly available for the years of census. So that is how we initially we were conducting the study on 2016, but now we have changed it to 2020. so that we can get those exact dates. So we have that for the 3 years, and thus we have also like modified our year of studies.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. No, la presentazione, poi si legge l'articolo. Ma per cui poi si legge l'articolo.
Introducing another presentation will be done by Lucia, gender disequality and urban settlement dispersion, which relationship with ICCSA Ganeti and Lorena Fiorini.
Thank you.
From the University of L'Aquila.
So, with this presentation, I will tell you about the gender disequality and the urban dispersion project that was written in collaboration with Lorena Fiorini from University of L'Aquila and was financed by the University of L'Aquila as 1 year research project for basic and initial research in the month of May of this year. I want to start with this schematic image by Tani Rath that explains in a simple and intuitive way the difference between these words: inequality, equality, equity, and justice. There is an apple tree with 2 individuals intended to pick its fruit. In the first case, inequality, the 2 subjects have a different access to the opportunity, the fruit in this case. In the second, equality is posed as a question, in sense, can evenly distributed tools and assistance consider the equality? The third, equity, as custom tools that identify and address inequality. And the last, the justice, that means fixing the systems to offer equal access to both tools and opportunities. Now imagine that these 2 subjects are man and woman. Does the analogy become clear to you now? Yeah? Do you believe that in addition to all the other factors, gender differences may also be affected by urban settlement force? In this case, this is a question for this research. And with the other author of this article, we hypothesized that urban forms and settlement dispersion in particular may negatively affect the quality of life of citizens, and in particular the quality of life of a woman. Why? What are our basic hypotheses of this research? First of all, let's see what are the main differences between a compact and a dispersed settlement. The issues of dispersed and low-density cities characterized by urban sprawl or urban sprinkling phenomenon have been highlighted in several studies and mainly concern uncontrolled land intake, inefficient use of energy source, and the higher economic and social costs involved. The dispersed city, in fact, compared to the compact one, needs a greater amount of infrastructure, resulting in the exploration of agricultural or natural areas and higher management of costs of technologies and transportation networks. A few more words about the urban sprinkling phenomenon. Urban sprinkling is a phenomenon of urban transformation characterized by very low settlement density, with the building disposed randomly on the territory. And this form of expansion is typical of the Mediterranean island areas, in particular of central and southern Italy. And this phenomenon generates significantly more critical effects than urban sprawl. In addition to direct negative effects such as fragmentation of natural habitats, and loss of ecosystem services, the urban dispersion. The urban sprinkling produce some indirect effects related to a total dependence on private care for the mobility, resulting in increased pollution, general economy, and social inefficiency, and dependence on fossil and mineral resources. The irreversibility of the phenomenon of land take and the ineffectiveness of urban and spatial policies aimed at limiting its progression are now of great importance. And the high-density city characterized by a more compact spatial configuration, the monocentric development, remains the most sustainable form of development today. It follows that a dispersed settlement is extremely dissipative compared to a compact one, which is therefore more environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable. If urban planning and policy choice affect spatial transformation, which in turn affects men's and women's quality of life, then the question of this research is it possible to assess how spatial transformation and settlement pattern affect women's quality of life? To give an example that is also a bit banal, just for an example, in a compact and one dispersed setting are provided the facilities to reach the main services. This does not mean equality, because in a dispersed context, it will take much longer, as also by car, to reach services than in a compact context, where it is easier that it can reach services by public transportation. For women, the difference is amplified compared to men, resulting in women participating less in working life, and having more disadvantages than men. In this regard, I would like to show you a short video that I have found on the web that show the place of power without the men, to show you how the place of power in all the world they will be without the men now in this situation. In 2020, women in managerial position are 34% of the total. Even lower numbers for position of members, board, and senior executives. Only one manager out of 3 in the European Union is a woman. So this example points to the fact that women's quality of life cannot depend only on the economic indicators, such as the flattening of salaries of men and women, or the presence of women figures in positions of body work, but also from the provision of services, access to career and employment opportunities, contractual and tax benefits, gender violence, performance in sports, and the other indicators. Across the European Union, the gender employment gap was 11% in 2020, meaning that the proportion of working age men employed exceeded that of women by 11 points. The gap is highest in Italy at about 20%. This due to the lower participation of women in job market. If we look at the unemployment rate, the European average is 7% for women and 6% for men, so 1 point of difference. For Italy, is 2 point percentage of difference. The gap between women and men employed part-time is still high in all Europe, 21% points. And as a result, the division of household activities between men and women is in almost all European states entrusted mainly to women. Italy is sadly second to last. in this ranking, following only by Greece. According to the National Institute of Statistics, to the Italian National Statistic, women in Italy take longer to travel by transportation than men. And women's commutes are also characterized as being short but more numerous, such as multi-stop, because compared with men whose commutes are mainly for work, they tend to engage in diversified activities. The employment rate of women with preschool children is 53% in Italy and only 35% in southern Italian regions, which, except for a few cases, are characterized by a strong settlement dispersion. Moreover, family aspects differentially influence the lives of women and men, affecting accessibility to basic services and consequently quality of life. Overcoming the gender gap is one of the Agenda 2030 goals, in specific Goal 5. In the relance policies following the pandemic crisis, issues concerning the flattening of salaries to shorten the gaps due to gender differences are addressed more than anything else. In contrast, this research aims to demonstrate how the shape of an urban settlement affects women's quality of life. The innovative character of this research lies precisely in the intention to investigate the relationship existing between spatial planning and the human behavior, a factor that both are reflected in the quality of life. In order to highlight how a dispersed urban context contributes to increasing gender inequality, the methodology proposed in this research project is based on a quantitative indicator that, independently of subjective perceptions, scientifically identify the phenomenon that we want to examine. Through the available data, both open source and proprietary, composite indicators will be tested, and through spatial autocorrelation analysis will be related to the values of settlement dispersion. As for women's quality of life, indicators derived from official data source at national and international levels, such as the Italian Institute of Statistics, the World Bank, the Eurostat, and other sources. The work are structured in this principal three phases. The first regard the indicator and data recognition. The second, the experimentation of composite indicators, and the third, the policies and the future addresses. In specific, for a first experiment, a preliminary experiment of this project, we have related the urban dispersion index with a composite indicator derived from National Statistic Institute, and elaborated by the Lab 24, that was an Italian editorial board. In particular, the index of urban settlement dispersion has been evaluated with the Moran index, a global index of spatial autocorrelation, and has a range of value between 0 and 1, where higher value correspond to urban compact settlement and lower value to urban dispersed settlement. The index of woman quality of life derives from the Italian editorial board, and the quality, in this case, the quality of life of woman grows as the index increases. The index is, in particular, is composed of 12 indicators, including life expectancy at birth, women's employment rate, youth employment, gender employment gap, job non-participation rate, gender pay gap, number of women owned business, women and administrators, and go on. In this initial phase of the research, the LISA indicator, the local indicator for spatial autocorrelation, has been experimented in order to preliminarily identify the relationship between the phenomenon to be analyzed. The first results showed the existence of a dependence between the two indexes. In particular, the LISA clusters value indicate respectively with the blue color the low cluster. This cluster identifies provinces with low value of the index of woman quality of life, adjacent to provinces characterized by low value of the same index. The same is valid for urban settlement dispersion, for which a low moral index corresponds to high urban settlement dispersion. The same for, on the contrary, for the cluster regarding the IGAIG cluster value, that is in red color, that show high value of quality of life and high value of urban dispersion index that correspond to a compact settlement. The results of this first analysis show the presence in southern of the Italy of a cluster of low value in blue color. And on the contrary, in the north of Italy, there is a cluster of high values, which respect to the both variable, urban dispersion and quality of life of women. Therefore, I start with a question, and for now, the only response that I can do to the question is for now, yes, there is a clear relationship between the gender disequality and the urban settlement dispersion. But for the future, for the next phase of the project, more data concerning the woman and the gender difference will be analyzed, such as the number of daily trips for work or study, the employment rate in public and private institutions, the supply of daycare centers, the access to maternity leave, and for example, the time dedicated to unpaid work, and go on. So I have concluded. Thanks for your attention. Do you have questions?
Spatial correspondence.
Yes.
This probably some relationship is not proven. Just a spatial correspondence. Okay. I just comment about it.
That is just spatial. Yes, spatial.
Not the correspondence, because you have the most quality of life in the center of Italy,
yes.
And that is not affected by compactness or
yes, but the region that the region that have a very low, very high urban dispersion correspond to the region that have a very low quality of life index.
Yes, if you consider the socioeconomic indicators, you have also the unemployment rate.
Yes.
That's why it's
but
the low quality of life. And normally unemployment rate means mainly unemployed of women, especially in south of Italy.
Yes, but this is a preliminary step for developed research. Thank you for show the evidence for the.
Okay.
Yep, no. Devo fare il microfono.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes, we have.
Okay. You said the next step of your research program is finalized to consider other kind of variables, such as the opportunity to have a career, works, and so on. Are you gonna consider their spatial distribution or the time to reach each of them?
Yes, probably both. But all these projects depend on the availability of the data, because it's very difficult to find the data divided by gender. In general, the data are aggregated for province and for yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the question.
And now, if I understand right, this will be the last presentation of this session. Again, Lucia. Differences in incongruences in lente. One moment, you need to drink, probably. Okay. Differences in incongruences in lente monitoring techniques. This presentation will be done by Lucia, and the co-authors are Barbara Lopatiello and myself.
This work was developed by, with the group of University of Basilicata, with Professor Beniamino Murgante, and another student, that's Barbara Lopatriello. So the great loss of soil and ecosystem services is one of the biggest challenges that Europe is already facing for several decades. The extreme importance of the soil issue stems from its being considered a non-renewable resource, at least in short term, and whose transformation are therefore irreversible. The uncontrolled consumption of soil resulting from processes of anthropization and field sealing produces economic, social, and environmental damages, reducing or destroying the capacity of soil to perform its basic ecosystem functions, which consequently impacts on biodiversity. For these reasons, the sustainable management of soil, their preservation and the protection of biodiversity are issues that in recent years are assuming particular importance in the field of territorial planning. And in the recent territorial transformation due to the extreme effects of climate change have made to the topic of land take considerable public interest. To approach these challenges, the European Community has set several targets to be achieved by now in the very, very short term, including zero net land take by 2050. The definition and the implementation of such policies, rules, and actions aimed at reducing land take appears to be now as urgent and priority. In this regard, the recent Recovery and Resilience tool approved by the European Union, the Next Generation EU, are also concerned with the environment, sustainability, and the fight against climate change. In Italy, the problem of land take has never been addressed in a systematic way. Today, there are numerous drafts and proposed laws with the common goal of limiting land take, but they have never made it to next level, that such is that of the transformation into law. In fact, in recent years, draft laws have followed one another, without ever completing the process of discussion and approval. Postponed, have been postponed, sometimes also depreciated in their basic principles and completely recovered by the amendments. All this has led, in many cases in Italy, to an uncontrolled extension of urbanization and land intake that shows no sign of stopping. Land intake is defined by the Superior Institute of Environmental Protection and Research in Italia as the growth of artificial land cover at the expense of agricultural, natural, and semi-natural areas. This definition corresponds to a change in land cover classes from non-artificial, natural, or semi-natural to artificial land cover, consumed land. The main and most impactful component of land intake is soil sealing, as it poses an increased risk of flooding and water scarcity, contributes to global warming, threatens biodiversity, and is particularly worrying when fertile agricultural land is covered. Among the main phenomena related to land intake have to be mentioned certainly those related to settlement dispersion, such as urban sprawl, more popular and new phenomenon, and urban sprinkling that that is a phenomenon prevalent in international areas of the Mediterranean context. From this synthetic framework, it emerged the need in Italy to address the issue of land intake in a systematic way, proposing a computational methodology that allows to quantify the phenomenon and compare it at national level first and then at European level. In this article, in this research, it is proposed an analysis of the data sets currently available for the quantification of the phenomenon of land intake, with interpretation of some definitions related to it, and from official sources, including the Environmental European Agency. The purpose is to highlight the differences and the incongruencies arising from the use of different techniques and data sets for monitoring land intake. For the quantitative analysis, we will use continuous and discontinuous. We have used continuous and discontinuous data sets, so raster and vectors, whose results will be compared with the data of the ISPRA report of 2020. This table shows the three definitions identified, and in last columns the core inland cover classes identified for each of them. There are the core inland cover at third level and at fourth level of detail. The first definition is consumption of land cover, whose source is the Environmental Agency, the glossary of Environmental European Agency, and in this definition has been divided into two parts to highlight the different components. The first part, the A definition, contains the expansion of a built-up area, which can be directly measured. The point B and point C of the definition are different, since point B considers extensive agricultural, while point C considers intensive agriculture. This distinction is possible only with the fourth level of the core inland cover, with which class DOS 1.1.1 refers in particular to intensive crops, while other classes the second, correspond to the extensive agriculture. The second definition, the land take, unlike the first definition, which refers to land consumption, considers the taking of land, or more precisely, the occupation of land by infrastructure and related facilities. This definition is specific to infrastructure and should therefore be referred to with a different terminology that includes the infrastructure itself. The third definition describes land consumption as an increase in settlement areas over time. Therefore, this classification includes rural settlements, urban areas, and everything related to them, green areas, area for sport and recreation. It is interesting to note that in same definition, this third definition, the terms land take and land consumption are used almost interchangeably. Based on each definition of land take, the calculation of the corresponding surfaces was performed with both vector and raster data. Due to the different level of structuring of the two database, there are some differences. Results are shown in this table, where are showed the surface calculated on a raster and vector basis according to the chosen definition of land take and their correlate cover associated classes. Considering that the vector surfaces have resulted for each definition greater than the raster ones, the difference represent the percentage difference of the raster compared to the vector. It means that, for example, taking the definition 1A, the raster data produces an estimation of land consumption equal to 1.68% of the vector data. It should be noted that the area of land consumption related to definition 1C was not analyzed because its specificity required the fourth level of correlate cover. The highest differences emerge in definition 2 concerning the land covered by infrastructure. This occurs because in the raster data, only the linear elements with such an extension as to cover at least 50% of a cell are detected, and consequently, all linear elements of minor entity, the secondary roads or roads of small size, are excluded for this analysis. In the report of ISPRA, consumed soil is defined as a total amount of soil with artificial cover, and all classes of permanent and reversible soil consumption are indicated in the relative classification. Moreover, the new classification system no longer considers interventions related to the conduct of agricultural activity in which the natural condition of the soil are ensured. The database of the ISPRA report now is very detailed and refers to data available with the Copernicus program, in particular to the Sentinel-2 mission, which provides multispectral data with a resolution of 10 meters. Thanks to this large availability of data, from the last year, the quantification of land consumption made by ISPRA has been increasingly refined, being able to detail the results obtained by specific coverage classes and the type of land consumption. Here you can see the legend of the ISPRA report of soil consumption, where you can find the consumption of soil, the the permanent soil consumption, the reversible soil consumption, the building, the street, and other classes of soil consumption. In order to highlight the main differences in the dataset from ISPRA and from Corrine Cover, a comparison was made first on a national basis, which you can see in the table here, and then on a provincial basis that you can see on the map, considering the set of two of the four definitions listed previously. Definition, in particular, definition 1A and 2, in which only surface completely impermeable are considered. This results results in a difference of 35%. This is a banal result if we refer to the different resolution of the two databases. But an interesting result regards the data of provincial level, where the positive and the negative differences, and these differences emerge from the comparison of the Corrine Cover data and the ISPRA data. In particular, the negative differences are attributable to the configuration of urbanized area, which in most cases are compact and of big dimensions. The positive differences are instead attributable to dispersed spatial configuration and small dimensions of urban settlements. In fact, the spatial resolution of Corrine Cover datasets, contrary to those used by the ISPRA dataset, does not allow the identification of small-sized urban areas. On the contrary, on compact and large spatial configuration of urban settlement, Corrine Cover overestimates the land consumption compared to the data of the ISPRA report. In particular, this is a case of a compact settlement where the Corrine Cover data overestimates the data of land take measured by ISPRA model. The Corrine Cover data is this shape with yellow-brown color, and the other is the ISPRA data. In second case, this is a dispersed settlement where the Corrine Cover underestimates the land take compared by the ISPRA data. So, in conclusion, from the calculation of land take in accordance with the different definition identified in this research, it emerged that the type of data used, vector or raster, involves difference in the average results of 3%. In addition, each definition of land consumption involves different and not negligible results. The comparison with the land consumption of the ISPRA report 2020 is not significant since the level of detail of the database used are not comparable at all. And this shows how, even though at the national level, the research on self-consumption is continuing with good results, identifying accurate definitions and allowing it to divide the phenomenon into different sub-processes, such as reversible, permanent land consumption. At the higher level of governance, the European one, these results become not comparable because the data available for European territory is completely different, and the only one that is the urban atlas is has a coverage that is limited because also in Italy we have only the principal province, the coverage for the principal province of the territory. And so this is the work, and I have concluded. So, thank you.
Questions? Okay.
Oh, yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
No, I think you have to go with.
Yes.
One moment, Angela.
Here? Close to here? Yes. Okay. So the problems regarding the crude resolution of the Greenland cover are well known, I guess.
Yep.
So there's an initiative now from the Copernicus Land Monitoring Service to launch a CLC Plus. Are you aware of that? To increase the resolution of Greenland cover 100 times, to reduce the scale of the zones for land cover categories. And so this might, in the immediate future, render CLC data more valuable in all of the case study we want to conduct, using land accurate and comparative in different European areas land use data.
Yes, but
problems for the past.
but
Yes, maybe they increase the resolution.
Yes, I think it's like Urban Atlas. It's like Urban Atlas. I think.
It's the resolution similar to.
Yes,
Urban
but
Atlas.
now I think
But it's
that,
not available yet. Yeah.
I think that the principal problem of this topic is the definition of the intake, because.
Oh yeah, of course.
Because, for example, in Italy, the definition is land consumption, and the definition is completely different from the European definition of land intake.
Okay.
Because include different
different conversions of
yes,
different categories.
Yes, different category, but also at the European level, there are a lot of definition of land intake, and each state use a different computation,
yes.
And in this way, each state try to reach the goals of to limit the intake in different way. Because if in Italy we measure the intake with with Greenland cover, or with the data of Italian Institute of, is very big. The difference is very, very big.
It's not comparable. You said that.
Yeah,
you were right. Not comparable at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Angela.
Actually, that was my question. If this problem we have in Italy about a shared definition of land take and land consumption is still present in other European countries, or if they have developed some solution to this issue.
At the European level, there is no unique definition of land take, but for the quantification of the land take, in general, we use the Greenland cover data or Urban Atlas, but from Urban Atlas.
From the
a total coverage of the territory. So I think that it's necessary a unique definition at the European level, not only at the Italian level.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was the last presentation, and if you want to say something, thank you for participants.
Thank you for participating at this session. I'm sorry if I bothered with the three presentations.
Thank you, Natalia, for attending. Because Natalia said thank you. Thank you for attending.
And I hope you can see in the next year. And I hope I can do the same session.
Okay.
And with much presentation, with more presentation. Not only mine.
Thank you, Lucia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. And the section is closed. Yeah, the section is closed. And thank you. Scrivo Damiano.
Poi fa quello che vuole.